Let's talk about. I came into the week. I was like, oh my goodness, capital gains. We talked about it a lot, and it was probably one of the biggest mainstream news stories of the week. So we got to chat about it, and we heard from farm groups this week, Kelvin, really talking about some of the consequences here. Uh, Kyle Larkin was one of them from grain growers, really outspoken about what we're potentially in store here from a consequence side with agriculture.
Yeah, Grain Growers of Canada, along with a number of other groups, Canadian Federation of Agriculture, the Canola Growers, Canadian Cattle Association, the Young Cattle Farmers Organization, I forget their exact name, they all launched campaigns and sent out press releases and statements this week, among others, uh, speaking out against these capital gains changes or asking for a carve out or exemption for intergenerational transfers on farms. As we heard from Kyle Larkin on the show earlier in the week, talking about how a typical farm across the country we'll see a grain farm will see about a 30% increase in its capital gains tax bill upon sale of the farm. They, of course, went with a bunch of assumptions in terms of modeling what a typical farm sale would look like across the country based off of historical land data from Farm Credit Canada, and they came up with that kind of 29 to 31% in that range across most provinces with a typical grain farm size, a 30% increase in costs. And so there's definitely been a all hands on deck effort this week in terms of pushing and raising awareness about this. And this all coincided with a finance minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, actually introducing the legislation. They've pulled this out of the budget. It's not part of the omnibus budget bill, even though it was announced as part of the budget back in April, but they've introduced separate legislation for this change specifically. And it was meant in many ways to be a trap for the Conservatives and for Pierre Poilievre to take a side here, and the Liberals were hoping that the Conservatives would vote against it and that they could say that the Conservatives are on the side of big business, wealthy Canadians, that type of thing. That is the side that the Poilievre and the Conservatives took, but they've certainly taken the approach of emphasizing that this is going to increase taxes on farmers and doctors and not using the word capital gains in all of the messaging either. I think that was a decision that was notably made by Poilievre and the Conservative headquarters as well.
Yeah, I'd be if I was a conservative, I'd be talking about productivity and growth. That's what we're in favor of, and some of these. The example of this policy is the antithesis
Yeah,
of
and
that.
I think that has been part of their messaging too. That's a better way of describing it than how I framed it.
No, you did fine. You're good.
hmm Yeah. So if I may, I think that no, Calvin, to your point, I think the conservatives are being very choosy with the words that they're using or maybe not using. I think they aren't maybe making as much of a fuss about this as perhaps the Liberals wanted them to. Realistically, if we look at it from sort of a strategic perspective, I think many of us would like to see perhaps a bit more fire, a bit more anger on this one because of how incredibly detrimental this potentially and will be to the productivity, the overall productivity of this country. At the same time, there's not really any chance of stopping this from going forward at this point. And so do you save that firepower for the actual election campaign? I'm going to guess so.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
think yeah,
go ahead.
from the Conservatives' perspective, yes, but so this effect is going to take place now. It's going to be implemented June 25th, but the
hmm
legislation itself is not going to pass Parliament before fall October or whenever they return to Ottawa. So I think this is something that MPs are going to be hearing about in their ridings. There's a by-election in Toronto in an area that has a high population of doctors and people that own their own businesses, and so there's some talk that this is part of that by-election focus as well. One thing that some of the national commentators have noted, like Paul Wells and Chantal Hébert, if you're going to set a trap for a political party, why communicate it and let them know 6 weeks ahead of time and let them strategize how they're going to respond? And I think that's where the Conservatives, they've definitely fallen or taken the bait that was laid for them, but I think they've completely and quite easily sidestepped the trap itself, and by
hmm
emphasizing that this is going to hurt productivity, hurt investment in business, hurt small business owners, that type of thing.
Why is it so bad to be pro-business in this country? How is this a
I don't
trap?
So,
know.
Like
yeah.
I would run into this trap full steam.
Because right, the Conservatives and Poilievre are very popular in blue collar worker crowds, and that's who the Liberals are trying to create this class differentiation here, and that's why Poilievre why there was some talk that maybe Polyev would vote in favor of this because of not wanting to upset blue collar workers. So that's it's yeah.
Are we not though? And I'll just throw it out there. Are we not very much preying on the fact that a lot of Canadians probably don't understand how capital gains work, and that if truth be told, many of us would love to be in a position to have to pay a capital gains tax.
Yeah.
I think that we have completely missed the mark on actually communicating how capital gains works, and the fact that yes, maybe blue collar, working class, whatever classist thing you want to put out there, how many of those people though have plans and will eventually be in a position where they do own extra properties or they do own a business that is going to eventually incur a capital gains tax potentially? That's actually a goal of many people, is to actually build their own legacy, their own businesses, their own whatever. And so, well, yes, and we've covered it here before, but I think we're completely missing the side of this conversation where, okay, sure, that 0.13% of Canadians, and Chrystia Freeland's whole, the wealthiest of the Canadians, that whole line really makes me angry for a lot of reasons, because if I work my arse off my entire life and I make good business decisions and I manage my risk and I build something and I hire people and I build productivity, why in the heck does the government figure that they're entitled to a bigger slice of it just because I worked hard?
Welcome to Canada.
That's ultimately what this is it's a punishment for having built something.
That's the part that she continued. Well, let's listen to what she said on CTV's Power Play. I have a clip. We're going to listen to a portion of it. It's a little bit long. And Vasi Kapelis, the host, who I've always liked her interviewing style for a long time. She can be hard hitting. She goes after Minister Freeland here a little bit in terms of promising a panacea. So let's listen to it.
Things you're talking about, though, dental care, Canada Child Benefit, daycare, they tally up to far more on an annual basis than this will bring in over 5 billion years. Why are you presenting it as a panacea to all that?
I'm not presenting it as a panacea, but I am presenting it as a meaningful way to raise money to fund the things that Canadians need. It's nearly $20 billion over the fiscal framework, and it is a fair way to do it. Because right now in Canada, the reality is a nurse or a plumber can pay tax at a higher marginal rate than a multimillionaire. That's not fair. So if we need money to make investments in Canada and Canadians, this is the fair way to do it.
I think you did present it as a panacea. I'm going to challenge the way that you're framing that based on your comments on Sunday. I'll read them directly to you. Do you want to live in a country where those at the very top live lives of luxury, but must do so in gated communities behind ever higher fences, using private healthcare and airplanes because the public sphere is so degraded and the wrath of the vast majority of their less privileged compatriots burns so hot? This is going to fix all that. And what responsibility does your government bear for putting us in that position in the first place?
Okay, so that's a portion from Power Play on CTV. The host there, Vasi Kapelis, talking to Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. And this is, I think, when you listen to what Minister Freeland says, I think it identifies the dots they're connecting that are different. It's not comparing apples to apples. Somebody in a plumber working at a company, that is a different risk than somebody that started a plumbing company and is borrowed a bunch of money and is trying to build a business. Like, those are two different things. And she is trying to compare that those taxes for those two people of different risk profiles should be fair, in her words, or she might as well just say equal. Mm-hmm. This is the part that I think we've lost sight of. It's not the same. Sorry. Like, I'm not trying, like, it's not the same.
That word
they don't understand.
That word fair just introduces so much arbitrary positioning, in my opinion. We see it in other places in life too. When the word fair gets used, I see it in my own family.
Yes.
As soon as that's not fair gets said, well, we all know what we say back. Life's not fair, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
before we break, can we just? I want to get your thoughts on this whole thing about this foreign interference and
light treason.
The
light treason.
Why are we not more upset about this, Lindsay? Please tell me why.
I don't know. And I would like everyone to get more upset about this. I don't know if it's just a complete disconnect from our political system because people are just sick and tired of it, if people are just more worried about their everyday and so they don't necessarily follow along. Is it that we have failed our MPs to teach them what, A, foreign interference looks like, and B, what treason is? I don't know where this has all fallen apart. But why, as Canadians, do we accept such a low bar on so many things, and especially on the conduct of our MPs? I don't understand where, as a country, we seem to think that everybody has our best interests at heart. Guess what, everybody? Nobody does unless we do. Other countries they have their best interest at heart, and they are going to do all sorts of nefarious things to get ahead. That's the real world. Why do we seem to think that we shouldn't be protecting what is Canadian and making sure that we understand what information can be shared and not shared, doing things that are in the best interest of Canada? I just don't know. I don't know where this all fell apart, but I also don't know how Canadians aren't collectively incredibly angry and disappointed that any of this even happened. But we all seem to be just sitting back and being like, what are you going to do? Meh.
Kelvin?
And I don't understand.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kelvin?
I don't think I have a great explanation either, other than in terms of our Canadian identity and our pride and patriotism as a country, we have certainly been told that we have a lot of flaws and not emphasized the strengths of our country for a long time. And so is there just an apathy, and we just and like Lindsay said, on a personal level, everybody has their own problems. So sometimes the big problems, we just assume government's looking out after these things, and people in government think other people in government are looking after these things. And in the end, nobody looks after these things, like we're seeing with this foreign interference scandal that's unfolding right now. And the government basically is saying that the RCMP needs to look into it. The RCMP saying they can't. The political party leaders need to look at it.
My lord!
Party
Next,
leaders
we're going to be
aren't
forming
doing
some
it.
sort of new national body to look into it. Like, whoa.
Somebody just take accountability,
But that's
please.
what's happening. Nobody, like,
Please.
right now, isn't a mechanism. And part of the issue is in Canada, our court system, on this file especially, our court system requires that both sides, guilty or the accused side, gets to see all the evidence. And that's where Canada can't, because of our commitments to other countries when it comes to intelligence, we can't have international intelligence being shared in a courtroom because of Canadian judicial requirements that it be shared with the accused. So that's one of the major complications here. Other countries do have a mechanism for having that without it being divulged in the court process.
Well, look at Senator Menendez in the U.S. on the Democrat Senator Bob Menendez. He is really in some bad legal issues regarding being on the take, and it does not look good for his political future whatsoever. When I heard this Canadian story, I thought of Senator Menendez right away.
And really, the rule of law, the bar for parliamentarians should be much higher than just breaking the criminal code.
Yes.
People get kicked out of parties and don't get banned from running in nominations all the time for much less than that, for things that are just alleged, never even proven. Innocent until proven guilty isn't a thing in politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the criminal courts it is. And so that's where there should be accountability. There should be a way to hold these people accountable if things have happened as alleged.
Yeah. Well, apparently, when they do, like, when kids go to the first week of the new hockey season, or my kids went to college, there was a bunch of training, and here's how a college athlete behaves, and here's some of the the expectations and those kind of things. Maybe we need to, like, foreign interference and for the new MP induction, not a good thing. You should be doing it. Apparently, we need to be doing it.